stay in the game. If you believe in it so much, you believe that it's got impact and it's positive, and you see that you are getting the results, but you're not getting it in front of enough people. Sometimes it's just staying in the game. Just work hard and just stay in the game. Eventually, it will take off. The way that I understand it is that God is outside of time. He's written something because we're in a snowball. He knows what's going to happen in that snowball over all the period of time, and that's where time sits. You go and achieve anything that you can, and he knows the outcome.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rizq podcast. This is episode 32. Today we've got a very, very intellectual podcast today with a good friend called Dr. E. He's founder of Human, which is what would you say, an alternative, or how would you even describe progressive therapy, alternative therapy? How would you describe what you've got here, Dr. E?
How did you first feel when you walked in here? What was the first feeling that you felt? Like, how would you describe it when you first walked in?
It was like a sensory overload. I walked in and it was like, I didn't know where to look. There was a lot going on. And it was almost, like the best way to say it is like, it's almost like walking into a spaceship. You know what I mean? You're walking from the road and you walk into like, almost like a TARDIS. You know what I mean? You walk in and you've got all this, like I said, all the sensory overload. So yeah, that was my kind of, thanks so much. That was my first impression of walking in here, was just like, wow, like you're walking into a different world.
Yeah. I wanted to create that intentionally. It's like the Star Trek of health. We want people to feel like, a lot of the word that people describe when they come in here, they're like, wow, it's like stepping into the future. It feels futuristic. And that's what Human's all about. It's about helping you identify and become a better version of yourself, an evolved version of yourself. So you're going to be stepping into the future of you, your Human 2.0.
Okay.
Right? So that's what Human is we're a set of teams, we're a set of therapies, we're a place, but we're also more than just a place. We're a community, we're a network, we're a lifeline, we're a bloodline of people that want to be the best version of themselves, okay, and to realize their potential. And our mission statement is pioneering a new era of healthcare to benefit humanity. What we do is engineer human biological potential. So we look at the biology, we look at the systems and processes that go on inside our body, make them work better to help you feel better, because this is how we experience the world. With good sleep, good energy, good focus, good immunity, we engage with the world so much better. So really what I wanted to do is remove all of the blockages that people didn't realize that they're living with, to unleash this clarity that the human body is created so magnificently, to get that out of the way so that they can just get on with what they want to do. Be the best parent, be the best brother, sister, father, mother, leader, boss, employee, name it, in sports, in life, at home. There's so many important things that we want to do. And often we don't realize what we're getting in our own way.
One of the things that comes to my mind, right? So, for the people who are listening and for the people who are watching this podcast, I had a tour of this place, and martial arts, like, amazing, right? Like, there's nowhere that you can't look where you can't see something that is like just either completely innovative within a medical practice or the highest level of that thing. So it begs the question, why is it that, and we're kind of just jumping straight into it then, right? So why is it that, us as people, as humans, why can't we get what we need just in our normal day-to-day? Why is it that we have to come to a place like this to get to that next level? Why isn't it that it's just natural for people to be able to progress, if that makes sense?
Because the environments that we live in, first, you don't need to come into the place to feel the best that you can feel, right? Like, I do want to make that clear, and that's part of the reason why I'm on this podcast, and many podcasts, and I speak, and we do, the sooner you start to engage with this type of philosophy of looking at your human body and treating your human body with the love, with the attention, with the care, you will get more out of life, and you'll prevent the decline of the human body. Okay, so you don't need to come into our stores here to experience that. But what this place does is our flagship. What it does is it helps inspire you, right? It gives you the experiences that people need, okay? That state changing experience. That, oh my God, I didn't realize I could feel like that, and I've got clearer thought, clearer energy. I didn't need to drink 6 coffees or 2 cans of Red Bull or whatever, to get that stimulant energy. I can have a clear way of thinking and being that allows me to make really smart, clear decisions. I'm not getting caught up in rage. I'm not getting caught up in these kind of negative emotions. You remove those out of the way. So some of the therapies that we have here give people that very quick experience within 60 minutes, within 90 minutes, within 20 minutes. You're hooked up to an IV right now. It's got some amazing nutrients in it.
Okay. Yeah, what have we got in this one?
You've got something super unique called NAD+.
Okay.
We brought that to the UK. And it's only been found out in the last few years how impactful it is. It works in every one of our cells, and it helps take oxygen from what we breathe and make energy at cellular level. So you should start to feel some mental clarity as we're talking. And then beyond that, as you go into your kind of rest of your working week, you're going to start to just feel a little bit brighter, lighter, clearer thought, less agitated, less restless. And it can be applied for whole various things. But what we've got for you is NAD+ and some B vitamins, vitamin C. When we think of vitamins, we think of like multivitamins on our shelves and, what we use, cod liver oil and things like that. But ultimately, this body is a vehicle, and our consciousness is driving it. And the vehicle takes fuel from what we eat and oxygen from what we breathe. So if we can start to deliver it the right nutrients and also improve our internal processes, so it takes the right nutrients out, suddenly the vehicle starts to get that super unleaded, that super octane, high quality things, and you start to get more out of your body. You don't get the fatiguing in the way, you don't get the slumps, you don't get the all the things I've mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's just a very simple way of approaching the body. And coming back to what you're saying, why did we even create such an experiential place? Is because that philosophy has not been taught to us. Even as a doctor, we're not taught in that philosophy. As a human being, we're not taught that we can take control of how we feel at any given point, right? We're just engaging with the world as recipients. The only things that state changing things that we're taught around are things like Red Bull, are things like drugs, smoke some weed and relax me, and all the other drugs. Everyone can name an effect of all those drugs, right? Because we're taught that those are the things that we would engage with to change our state for a desirable state, right? But actually, there's some really simple, clean, safe, non-toxic things that you can be taking that's just going to make you feel better.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as I'm listening to what you're saying. It's very interesting because some people, including myself, I'm sure we all get into these modes where we feel like we are a certain way, right? So, for example, you mentioned about if we're changing our diet, then that will help us to become less agitated, less angry, and stuff like that. And it's almost like people get into these mind frames where they say, "I am an angry person" or "I am an agitated person," when actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just sounds like their lifestyle is causing their body stress in such a way that it affects their mindset, it affects the environment, and then therefore, you kind of have that negative feedback loop. So, yeah, so from what you're saying, your diet is important, not just for the quality of your health, but the quality of your relationships, the quality of your work and everything else. And so that's what you're focusing on then, basically. You're targeting, I guess, individuals who are like really like the high performers, right? People who want to do well in life, people who want to progress in life, and they want to get an edge. They want to evolve to that next level of human that can kind of outcompete their peers, in essence, right?
Outcompete their previous self.
Okay, outcompete themselves.
That's it. That's what life is about, right?
Yeah.
It's about evolution. If there's any reason to be on this earth, is to the reason is to evolve yourself through all the tests and challenges we get through life that are prescribed as medication for us. With each of those, we should be taking learnings and reflections and evolving ourselves. It's a journey to get to know yourself, in my perspective, and through getting to know yourself, you get to know your creator and through reflection on creation as well. But yeah, what you said is absolutely spot on. You know that kind of understanding that actually we're a set of cells, like a bacteria, like a germ, like a fungi, a virus. The human is a collection of cells that responds to how its environment is and adapts, both positively and negatively. So in my setup, we've got a lot of therapies that you can do that are controlled stressors that will create some biological adaptation that are positive for you. Okay, so that's our methodology and our approach in looking at the human body. And yes, we apply it to high performers because they are looking for this. But we apply it to everyone. Health is for everyone. So even people that are sick, that can't get the answers from their traditional health system, lifelong asthma, lifelong eczema, really bad psoriasis, inflammatory bowel disease, early diagnosis of Parkinson's, substance misuse and can't get off it, is trying to get off it. All of these people we help day in, day out as well. Okay, so we help people at that end. We help people who feel healthy but they want to perform better. Elite athletes at one end, top musicians, heads of states, name an industry. We touch base with them. And at the other end, right at the other end, you get a small set of people who've kind of rev their engine so much and done some amazing things and achieved success for them, but they've depleted their health completely.
It's really interesting you say that, actually, Doctor, because I remember I was going for Umrah once and I was walking through, and usually if you're coming from economy or business, there's a door, in front of business that you get out, and then you've got first class, which will have a door at the front, right? And when we're getting off this Umrah flight, we're all in our ihrams and everything, we're walking through, and then they say, look, there's no door for the business, so you have to go through first class to get out. And as we're walking, obviously, you're just looking around and just seeing first class and stuff. And I remember very vividly there was an individual who's sitting, probably the seat was 1A, right? As close as you can to the door as possible in first class. And this person was hooked up to a mask. This guy was hooked up to, a drip. He had just pipes coming out everywhere. And it was very obvious that this person couldn't, walk, couldn't take care of themselves. It was a relatively young person as well. And, at that moment, you just got to think that, it doesn't matter how much you have in life. If you don't have your health, then really you don't have anything. And if you have health, then you have everything because you have potential. And so no, I think, when you said that really hits the nail on the head there, that what is the point of life if your body, the only thing that we're gonna, but this is the only thing that is constant with us, right? And why you're not going to look after it, right? It's back to the analogy. I think I heard you talking about you want to be almost like a pit stop for, like an F1 car, you're the pit stop for humans. So I think that's really important. I think the mission that you're on is really important. And I think the good thing is that we live in a society where this is becoming more and more prevalent. And I guess people are taking more conscious effort towards it. But that all being said, we're sat here, beautiful location, state-of-the-art facility. And, here you are, one man as the leader of this organization. So I think myself and all the people watching and listening would like to know a little bit more about you and how you got started. So if we start straight from the top, where were you born? Were you born here in the UK? Were you born in India? Where did you get started?
Yeah, I was born in Barking. There used to be a hospital there, Barking Hospital. They closed it down. Yeah.
A&E must have got too busy.
No, I don't even think they probably had a big A&E, but it was a small hospital in Barking. Yeah, I was born there. Grew up in Ilford. And then moved to Gants Hill in my early teens. yeah, and then then went to university in London, King's College. I did another degree at Imperial College, London. Then I did after that. Um, yeah, during that time, I should say that I started working quite young actually, because my parents, I think this is more, me is a product of my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents have got a way more interesting story than I have, um, and but so my parents came probably like, I imagine like yours, first generation immigrants, economic immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad came 15, 16 years old by himself, eldest child of his family.
They came over when he was 15, 16 by
16, yeah,
himself.
by himself, yeah. And
It's
he
a different time, isn't it?
different time, and economic migrant. So he came from a family of like teachers. We're from India originally,
Mm-hmm.
and actually he was the second eldest, and he had a responsibility to basically make bread
Mm-hmm.
and support, through making bread, establish a presence here and support the family back home. And my mom came when she was 16 as well. She came with her brother. Her brother had a small factory in East London making clothes, and so and she stayed in her in a house with all of her siblings, and their focus was to establish themselves and presence for the future generations. And they met in their kind of early 20s, and got married, and they started to build a business together. Um,
What was that doing?
they were they were making leather jackets.
Oh, wow.
I had a small factory in East London making leather jackets. My dad had two jobs, one in the Royal Mail, one in the factory. My mum was in the factory as well. Prior to that, my mum was a machinist making clothes in East London. East London, like a Shoreditch area. Now it's very hip. And then then my early memories were, you know, my dad would be going out to markets on the weekends. There were no shopping malls.
Mm.
Before shopping malls, they'd be going out to market stalls, taking the van out, sleeping in the van, and doing trading on the market stall. And my mum would be, she'd be looking after us, but going straight to work as well during the day, coming back a bit late in the evenings. They should be at the factory looking after the factory, and my dad would be. So they were working
Mm-hmm.
hard all the time.
And where are you when they're working? It's obviously they're working
So as a,
multiple.
I was obviously as a primary school, or but then whenever I could be, I'd be with them. Um, Evenings, weekends, whenever they needed to go to the shop, me and my sisters. I had two older sisters, so we used to look after each other.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'd say they look after me. But they used to make me put the bins out. I remember that, and do the Hoover. And anyway, but yeah, it was that kind of household. There was a purpose, an intention, and a mission, and that was very clear. And my mom's, because they didn't have the chance to educate. My mom was absolutely, she had to leave school to come to this country, so she was like, education is
Paramount,
like
yeah.
so important. Like,
Yeah.
and bless her, and bless my dad as well. My dad was very keen on education, but it was more my mum. There's always one that's more kind of like driving the education at home, and that was my mum. And she would spend any savings to make sure that we would get good education. And yeah, I mean, then she also, I remember one thing that was quite interesting, because I grew up in Ilford, in our community. When I was probably about 8, 9, or 10, at that time, she was like, to her whole family, she was like, okay, we need to move out of here, because there's too much negative influence from the community. It's holding us back from the way we're thinking and what we can achieve. And she moved us to Gants Hill, not far from Ilford, right? But down the road in Gants Hill. And the purpose of that was to move us just far enough away so that we would be having a better environment, right? Well, better in the sense that less distractions and people around us that are, not going to hold us back from the way we're thinking. Anyway, so I kind of remember early memories going to market stores, Romford Market, Blackbush Market, like, and just seeing how my dad would sell leather jackets, and my mum, and that just like team based hustle, really, but having one mission together. And I think that's something that I always have taken on in everything that I do, is about the team. It's about creating a purposeful, mission-driven purpose that you're all in it together. Because you can't do things by yourself. It's not about yourself. It's about doing things that you benefit, everyone benefits, but you're working on it together. So, and we that carried on through life. That we took that principle, alhamdulillah, through life, and through the ups and downs of life. And my dad's business did very well, but because he didn't have the education, he made some. They made. It didn't quite work out. They made the right investments, and you know, it went from having a successful business to very quickly having a lot of debt and and the business being in crisis. And that required, in the early 90s, the marketplace changed, the environment changed, the 87 crash, there was like crashes in the early 90s as well. The marketplace for leather jackets changed. People importing from India, Pakistan, and other places. The taste, the desire changed from the marketplace. Where people would shop changed. So all of these things started to change. And if you're not foreseeing those things, you can become a victim of your own success. And that started to happen to us. And so I started to see that my dad had to start minicabbing and, become a minicab driver. My mom had to go work in another factory, in someone else's factory, machining, and they had to sell their properties. And it brought a lot of hardship to us. And I must have been 10, 11 at that time. And I remember, alhamdulillah, like in my primary school, I went to a private primary school, and it was because my mom was like, okay, all savings, we're going to put into that. And then obviously she found this really good school for me called City of London School in the city. And I just think back, and now I think back, I'm so impressed that my mum going out of East London, finding all of this school in the middle of the city, and taking her son there to do an entrance exam for scholarships and other stuff. And I got a scholarship, alhamdulillah. But at that time, because we couldn't even afford to pay the scholarship, the remaining amount, it was like 50-50 scholarship or whatever it was. And but the government had introduced a scheme there called the assisted place, and that's basically where the government fund for you to go into a private school, and it's like a bursary, and so they gave me that bursary, and alhamdulillah, I managed to go to this school in the city that had all walks of life there, but predominantly at the upper echelons, and I was like seeing kids being dropped off in like nice cars, and like, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm taking the tube from 11 years old going to school, and it was just a massive formative experience for me, that whole thing. And it left me, because obviously I would be going to collect my lunch cards and all of this stuff, and that psyche as a teenager going through that, it was really, really formative, and it was challenging at times, and but it was also what kind of contributed to me, and what contributes to my purpose. Because I believe that all of these cards have fallen for me, and it doesn't start with my parents, it starts with the generations before that, and their hard work, and we've seen our access and our ability to our access to education and our knowledge, and that has brought on other opportunities. And your life can change in 20 years, in 15 years. It can go upside. It can literally change for the better and for the worse. We've seen a bit of both. And so it does feel like, to me, like it's not just for my benefit that I want to seek success. It's for the benefit of the generations that came before me and the hard work that they've put in to see us rise each time, and then for the impact that we can have to others to support their rise, right, and clearing things out of their way, right. And you know, and that is what's ended up at human, a mission driven entity that, okay, is serving one end and now more and more ends of society. And what brings everyone into human is that mission to to get an impact, a positive impact on everyone that we touch, more and more and more, so that they can clear things out of the way, and they can go on a journey of fulfillment, self fulfillment, and they can dream as big as they can, you know, with what they have, and they can go after it. You know, I used to do mentoring at Brampton Manor in East London, like a school in East London in near Canning Town, East Ham area, and while I was at uni, and I remember going there one day, and I was given, you know, talking to like 14 year olds about different accesses into medicine. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to get the A's. Some universities have like access programs where you can get B's, C's, and still get in, by doing an additional course. Places like King's, you know, really good programs like that, Queen Mary's and other universities. And I was talking to the kids about this, and they were like, you know, and asking, what do you want to be when you're older? I want to be a mechanic. What do you want to be when you're older? I want to be this. I want to have a little shop. And no one said I wanted to be a doctor. And I was asking them, why don't you ever think that you want to be, or a high level of profession? Why don't you ever think that? Why didn't none of you want to go to university and be a professional? If there was only a couple. It's like, oh, it's just unrealistic for us, doc. It's just unrealistic, you know. And that was really awakening for me, you know. Like, that's really awakening. It's like, wow, like the biggest gift that we can give the younger generation is to make them believe that anything is possible. And that has to be a belief. If someone else can do it, why can't I do it? And that is what my mum used to drill into me as a kid. If they can do it, if someone else can do it, why can't you do it? You have to believe you can achieve anything in life. And that is the biggest gift, because it's the belief structure that stops and inhibits and blocks. And then it's also your biology as well can come in the way. But it's your belief structure. That is the most important thing. Your belief system. What do you believe is possible for you to achieve in this life? Okay, and we take Islam as a kind of, we're predestined to have a certain amount of rizq in our lives. Everything's written for us. There's two ways of looking at that. One way, fatalistic. Okay, I'm only going to get what's written for me, and therefore, what's the point? Or, the way that I understand it is that God is outside of time. He's written something because we're in a snowball, and He knows what's going to happen in that snowball over all the period of time, and that's where time sits. So He knows what's going to happen. He's written it. He just knows what you're going to end up doing. That's all. He's not written it so that you're going to go and do that. My interpretation is that you go and achieve anything that you can, and He knows the outcome. That's it.
Absolutely. As I say, just tie your camel. You can't leave your camel untied and expect it to still be there when you come out. You know, you should tie your camel, then put your faith in Allah. And I think that's really interesting. I think everything that I'm getting from you, Dr. E, is that the focus for you is actually the outcome and the lifestyle, and almost like what I'm hearing is that we can, as humans, create negative placebos and positive placebos from our mind, which then creates again that feedback loop. So it's very interesting how powerful the mind is, and then your focus is, you know, things like this, you know, clearing the mind, making sure that people have energy, they have focus, they can, you know, think clearly. And then what you're doing on top of that is, you know, going and educating and mentoring people and just showing them that door exists. You know, from the sounds of it, it sounds like a lot of these people, they grow up and they don't understand that the door even exists, that they can walk through, you know, let alone that it's locked and, you know, it's too hard to get in. They just don't even know that it's there. So, you know, I think that's really interesting. One of the takeaways from this so far that I've got from you is that your focus really is on creating a mind which is just like a great
And
place to
body.
be, and body.
Yeah, mind and body. Yeah, and you know, the other thing is that being in terms of the belief system, the an important thing to understand is that we are all privileged. We all have some privilege. In the UK, we're all privileged. Okay, some less so than others. And what is privilege? In our religion, in our faith, it's a responsibility. Okay, it's a responsibility, and it's not a right. Okay, why did God make the society unequal? Okay, because the poor are a test for the rich, and the rich are a test for the poor. The healthy are a test for the sick are are a test for the healthy. And, you know, that's something I heard from a talk by Hamza Yusuf, and it really kind of resonated with me. That, you know, the privileges that we all have in some shape, size, or form are also a responsibility, and you know, that is success. That is risk. You know, that is risk, and we should, you know, we should be spreading that message that is the success is not monetary. The success is in the heart, is in the soul, is that fulfillment. And yes, okay, money can be part of that and holding it in front of you, not in your heart, but it can also be a disease. It can be a problem. We have to balance that. We have to understand that, you know, it's not just money. There's so much more to life in getting fulfillment. And people that have sustenance, sustenance for our soul, is that fulfillment, is that peace, is that contentment. And the fulfillment comes from helping others. The fulfillment comes from being nice to your neighbor. The fulfillment comes from giving a smile. The fulfillment comes from supporting a young person to nurture and develop them. You know, that fulfillment for us, from the people that we serve. And so, you know, this life is just a journey to understand and master ourselves, and then to get to know our creations. To God made us all white, brown, yellow, black, small, big, less abled, more abled. You know, He made us all, and we're all creations of God. You know, and we have to we have to understand also the nafs and the ego, and we have to work and challenge ourselves and question ourselves continuously. You know, where is this desire coming from? Where is this desire for money, for cars, for whatever it is, power, for fame? Where is it coming from? From within us. And is it something positive, or is it something negative? And by remembering that no power comes from it except from the power of God, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, no power comes from the power of God. We have to remind ourselves of this all the time, that we are just this little dot in the creation. But this little dot, we want to have a good time on this earth and do good things, you know, and I believe that once you got a good intention and you guard that intention, and it takes time, it takes practice, and it means sometimes crossing the line on the other side and doing bad stuff, you know, that's part of being human, you know, and then reflecting on it and coming back and say, you know, through that reflection process, you get to refine your kind of your direction, you get to refine your journey. It's through that journey that, you know, life becomes really kind of amazing, and actually the support, the rizq comes, the sustenance from God comes. And that, you know, I found that when I really align myself to my niyyah, and when I move away from that intention, then things start to go wrong. I lose the rizq, I lose the feeling, I lose the sustenance in all shapes. And when I start to come closer to that niyyah and intention, I find my contentment improves, my fulfillment improves, and the universe brings things in in our paths, and that's God working away, you know, because you know, to do good things is to do a godly thing, to do a godly thing, and I'm in the business of healthcare, and healthcare is doing good to people, and so we have to be serving people in a good way, and that requires me as the founder of the business driving that there's the guardian of this brand, human, and it's an amana just having the name human. It's there to serve all humans, and it's a constant reminder that and I like to articulate this because every time I articulate it, it's another amana that one day any of your listeners can pull me up on. You know, Doc, you know, I don't feel like you're serving as many humans as you can, or whatever it might be. Or you're all about the Lambos now, Doc. No, I'm not about that. But you know, I'm just saying, like, if that
The
does
three
happen,
that you have outside are really nice, though.
what's that?
Your 3 Lambos that you got parked outside.
Those little toy ones, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just joking.
No, I tell you
There's
where
a
my
Rolls Royce.
Lambos are parked. The downstairs, that oxygen chamber, that cryo chamber. Those are all Lambos, bro. Like equivalent.
You know what? I wanted to. There's kind of like a few different sections because, like, there's so much that we could actually talk about. Like, there's so much that we could go very in depth about. So many different topics, but you know, there's a couple of things that I wanted to speak about. Right. So one of them is obviously, you know, the actual pragmatic building of this business. Right. That's something that I did want to go on to, but I think where we're at right now is a very like poignant topic about God. And I just wanted to ask on that, right? So one of the things that we kind of see a lot is, and not to make it into that, but just from yourself, from a personal perspective, right? We see that a lot of people, when they study science, that they, you know, part of the curriculum is obviously things like evolution. There's no recognition of God within science in that sense of we can't prove it, therefore how does he exist, right? Has your faith, I mean, obviously you went to madrasa, it sounds like you had a very traditional upbringing.
South Asian, yeah.
Did education in secular education, medical education, scientific education, did that, you know, how did that impact on your spirituality?
My belief, you know, by biology brought me closer to God. Understanding the complexity of creation brought me personally closer to God. You know, just the idea that we're trillions of cells that self-replicate, self-organize, just it's in, you know, there's so many miracles. You say miracles, but there's so many. It's such a complexly engineered creation. Just the human body, let alone the plants, let alone the trees, let alone the atmosphere, let alone the universe. All of them are amazing. You know, obviously, like you can't replicate any creation. And that 100% brought me closer, and to having faith that there is a creator. You know, and yeah, that faith is strengthened over time and goes through ups and downs as you kind of engage with the external world and you grow up and you mature, and you know, you go through journeys, right? But ultimately, that tenet, when you spend time to reflect personally, and you just look and you marvel, and it's no surprise that all the prophets were shepherds. They had time to reflect and contemplate and look around at their creations and say, wow, like you see them grow young to old, old to young. The sunrise east to west, the seasons, everything has a beautiful, you know, system. And for me, going into the kind of science, which is the theories around explaining creation, and how it works, how things work, I became really, really I developed strong faith from that. And when you mirror that and you start to read the Quran and in English and take an understanding of it and listening to other things around it, and then you start to see the complexity of how beautifully the Quran is constructed and engineered, in its symmetry, in its numerology, in its meaning and depth, and in explanation of stages of creation. And you're like, oh my God, like, okay, like this is overwhelming. You know, the evidence is overwhelming, and And just because Darwinism says that, you know, there was a big bang, and okay, maybe you know, there's some Islamic scholars and scientists that correlate the stages of creation of the universe related to an energy. Maybe that was part of how God created the universe as such. And I don't think there's a conflict. There's no conflict between science. There's never actually been a conflict between science and religion. It's always been a conflict of not knowing enough and not having uncovered enough. And it's interesting over time that the Quran is revealing more and more as science is revealing more and more. You know, and that's one of the amazing things about the Quran being 1400 years old, but still the faith is still strong amongst society generally, amongst the universe, amongst humans generally. And that's part of the miracle of the Quran itself, and why there doesn't need to be potentially need to be another prophet, right, and a messenger, because God's like, look, this is the way He's ordained it.
No, absolutely. That's really beautiful, and I think I completely agree with you that people who say science takes them away from God, just they don't think deeply enough about what they're actually looking at and what they're seeing. And I think it goes down to gratitude as well, right? When you see a baby being born, how can you say that there's not a God? How is it possible to say that this came from two humans? Like, where did that come from? And I think that's just that last step, isn't it? You can have evolution, that might be 100% true, but where did that come from, right? Where did that cell come from?
And the most beautiful thing about time now, like when I was a kid, it was like encyclopedias and going to the library, right? When I was a young kid, then Encarta and CDs came down. I don't know how old you are, but
yeah, no, I had some of them.
Similar age. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, but now when you have a question, Chat GPT, it gives you the answers, not even Google anymore. And so explore curiosity. Anything you're curious about, why do the clouds form in that way? Boom. Find out there and then. Don't waste time. Follow that interest. Create a passion. Become curious. Don't take the quick 30-second TikTok video as an explanation. Go deeper. That's what's amazing about life, is that we have an opportunity to learn and keep learning and there's so much to learn and absorb from. Follow that curiosity, and just go on that journey of learning and thinking, and become someone that has something to contribute to that, because you bring different concepts together. You can't get there straight away. You got to see what existing knowledge there is out there, and then start bringing different constructs and concepts together, and you will become an expert eventually, right? You'll become an expert and a thought leader eventually. And takes like 7 to 10 years, they say, to become an expert, sometimes a lifetime in different things, but it all starts with a spark of curiosity. And that's something that served me really well, is being curious and feeling like it's okay to go and ask that question. Doesn't matter how I look, how I sound, it doesn't matter, because the first time you ask the question, you might sound stupid. The second time you ask a question, you've already got the answer from the first time. You know a little bit more, and you keep learning. So when you're in school, you ask the questions. We're at university, you ask the questions, and then if you're not sure, you go do some reading. Okay, what do they say in other countries or other places? Where's the text? Okay, that's interesting. You follow that. You follow it. You keep going, and it's and through that you're kind of it's such a healthy, beneficial pursuit of knowledge. Pursuit of knowledge is so beneficial. It's just so healthy to go down a route of like pursuing knowledge and developing an interest in something. Society is engineered now where these short information nuggets, we're going to be driving, if we're not careful, a society of people that don't know very much about a bunch of stuff. They know a bunch of stuff, and they get their information from social media and other places. And we're seeing libraries closing, people not reading as many books. We're seeing this polarizing of society. Some people becoming really smart and educated and experts, and then a lot of people just not. And I think if there's you started off by saying first you've got an intellectual. Thank you for that. I'm still on the journey, and but yeah, look, it's I've got to push that. I've got to promote that. It's so worthwhile doing. It is so worthwhile. I've enjoyed it so much using my thought processes to put a system of care together that no one else has done before, seeing the results, testing my hypotheses. I think this is going to outcome based on the knowledge that's out there, and I think we're going to get this result. Oh my God, we got that result. Oh my God, we didn't get that result. Okay, but doing it in a safe environment. What this is actually a lab. It's a human lab. But I've been doing it for 7 years, and now it's like established, tried and tested protocols of care that are getting results that are brilliant and reproducible. And we keep going, we keep adding new things in. And yeah, now people call me a thought leader, an expert, a pioneer. I didn't go out to get that title, right? Maybe a part of me did, I don't know. But honestly, I think, I'd like to think I didn't. But what I did follow is curiosity, and just felt brave enough to go and ask, step up and ask. I remember one of my first, jobs as a doctor, because I had many jobs before that. One of my first jobs as a doctor, I was a junior doctor, and I saw the CEO in the corridor one day. And I was like, I just bumped into him and said, hi, I just want to introduce myself. And there's this problem that I've seen on the ward that I'd like to be involved in supporting to improve. And she was taken aback. She was like, who are you? I'm like, I'm a junior doctor, just started here. And then I started going into board meetings with her on this topic, and she'd set me up, meet all these kind of senior managers, and I remember I presented it to the clinical team I was working with. On we had these monthly meetings, and everyone had to present something different topic. So I decided to present that topic, and there's only a small group of 10 people. I got a standing ovation from them, and I was like, what the hell is going on? But they were just like, they were so impressed, consultant surgeons. They're so impressed that you went out of your way. They felt you went out of your way. For me, I didn't feel like. For me, I was curious, and I was just enjoying it. And I was like, yeah, this is great. I get to now be in a boardroom and learn what goes on here. I get to learn what goes on there and apply it. So I think the world is, I think we create our own barriers. Brown, the white person might not talk to me. The CEO is white, and then I need to be like them. No, you don't need to. You just need to be yourself and just have good intention and just go and introduce yourself and say, I want to get involved in this project. I found this problem. Can I help? And you'd be so surprised at what you can do when you follow that. And you show yourself. You just show up and you do something. We're not taught to, I remember it was a mantra, you got to go above and beyond, and you got to see that going above and beyond is not for anyone else's benefit, it's for your benefit. Yeah, when you put in an overtime and you go learn a new skill and you go do something different and you contribute more, it's for your own benefit of development. You're investing in yourself. And investment just doesn't mean paying for something. Investment of your energy, investment of your time, investment of your thought process. Prayer is an investment in your spirituality. There's opportunities constantly to invest in yourself and to take your energy and put it into something and try and just go for it and try and see what happens. Be brave.
Take a risk.
Take a risk. Be brave. Put yourself on the firing line. Go up there and say, I'm willing to try something. I'm willing to put some more time into something. Because where is that time going to go otherwise? You're going to go back home, maybe to hang out with your friends, TikTok, I don't know, whatever you're going to do, there's always opportunity to follow an interest, and to then, with those interests, you notice when you've done one thing, you talk about it in a discussion, and another opportunity will come up, and then you get involved in that, and each of those that builds into experience, and those experiences, different experiences, you bring them together over time to what you're doing. All of my experiences in life contributed to where I am now, from being on a market stall at Romford Market as a young, annoying my dad, getting in his way. Yeah, then I was pretending to hold in the mirror, trying to sell jackets. as like a 10, 11-year-old, and then, working in, market stores, then my dad had, I didn't say, he had a laundrette, washing people's clothes, doing service washes for people at 14, 15. Very humbling, amazing experience. Um, Washing people's underwear, disabled people's clothes, soiled clothes for like £3, £4. Amazing experiences. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Would not have it any other way. In fact, some of my fondest memories. And these are all character building. These are all positive experiences that you're part of your journey, the ingredients that make your soup. Right? But they don't just come to you. You have to embrace them. You have to be positive. You have to see the good in them, and more opportunities will come. And you just got to go. Keep going, getting those opportunities. They're another ingredient that will turn into this beautiful cake one day. Right? Eventually they will. They'll come together. And all of my experiences in life have all come together to this. I don't know where this will take me. It might be a success, it might be a failure. It doesn't matter. It's a set of experiences I'm getting. And that's more important to me. That's more valuable to me. Right? And then it's from those experiences, other things will come in the future. God knows best.
Inshallah. So you mentioned there obviously that you were working, in a practice, right? So you went to university, you studied, you got multiple degrees from the sounds of it, from what you mentioned, and then you went into work, or maybe you did a master's at the same time as working. So how long were you working in a practice or in a hospital, or I guess in the NHS system?
Yeah, in the NHS, so basically how it works is after you qualify for medical school, you apply to work here to do your foundation years, your junior doctor years, so 2 years at my time when I did it. And I worked in central London and in Kent. And in those 2 years, you did different rotations of jobs in the hospital. So A&E, surgical rotations, ITU, etc., etc. And then thereafter, you decide to choose what specialization you want to go down: surgery, general medicine, general practice, radiology, and a few and some others. So you're at this kind of fork of what you want to do. And I decided to do general practice. I had done so at university. You get to choose to do an extra degree for 1 year. It only takes a year, but it's called an intercalated BSc. So you intercalate, which means in between. And I decided to do a health management degree. So I went to that's where I went to Imperial and did that for a year. And it was such a contrasting experience. One from like 400 people in a year, sitting in the back of the lecture theatre, not turning up, in all honesty, very much, because you're not missed, and you're not engaged when you're there. And then going into like small group teaching, I loved it. Fantastic, amazing. I loved it, got the most out of me. And it opened my eyes as well to a different way of looking at the world, because it was more management, more business management, but with a touch of healthcare, so entrepreneurship, marketing, etc., modules and things like that. And then, so I decided I had a crossroads where I was like, okay. And also, during that year, I ended up going to San Diego and working in a stem cell facility. And so I got introduced, I wrote a thesis around the stem cell industry, and I was like, oh my God, the stem cell industry is fascinating. Well, apart from the industry, the human body is even more fascinating because it can regenerate and heal itself. And then at the same time, did another internship in South Africa, in Soweto, in a township in Africa. Soweto, which Soweto is like one of the biggest slums, former slums of townships in Africa.
That's where Mandela's from, is it?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. And they had a big military hospital. There was a military hospital called Baragwanath, and I did an internship there working in trauma surgery, and it was wild, right? And it was just like, you see some crazy stuff. I saw a woman set a light, and she come in with all these burns. I saw a man whose testicles had been chopped off and he was bleeding out. I was doing surgery, just me as a kind of not in a doctor yet, as a medical student, assisting a general surgeon, just me and him, like gunshot wounds, trying to save someone on the table. And it was another defining set of experiences, that contrast of going from that and then to San Diego. And life is full of these, if you're looking, full of these opportunities to reflect and broaden your horizons. Brilliant. And yeah, then thereafter, I was like, okay, I'm either going to do surgery or I'm going to do something where I can improve healthcare at a bigger scale. And so I decided to do general practice because it would give me consultancy at the end and a license to practice independently. And it was a shorter training program. But during that time, I also did a fellowship in clinical leadership and healthcare management. Again, something that I wanted to do, I applied to, and I did. And that was where I started to work within, they take a few, 10, 20 of you that want to be future leaders of the health system. And they kind of expose you to, higher is the wrong word, but a different approach to looking at how to design and deliver healthcare systems. I worked in Pentonville Prison for a little while, connecting up the prison to Whittington Hospital. That was another crazy experience. During that year, I also worked with patients that were teaching other patients how to manage their newly diagnosed diabetes. That was blew my mind as well. I was like, wow, the patient knows more than the doctor, way more. You know, the experienced patient knows more than the doctor. And so all challenging these kind of like things that you stereotype, these kind of natural kind of things that you grow up with, these borders really, and you open, as long as you're open-minded and you kind of look and reflect, you can really take on a lot more. And then I was like, okay, finish my general practice training. And during that time, I was like, okay, I can't make the impact I want in the NHS because it's too big, it's too hard. You know, there's too many competing interests. I like to do innovations. I like to do things differently. So then I looked into health venture capital. I actually got offered a job and I just went for a meeting. Again, something that I was like, you know, just very aggressive is the wrong word, but just very like, if I met someone, I'd be like, you know, I'd be like, okay, can I meet? I want to meet, you know, one of my mentors. I got them to be a mentor. And I was like, I want to be exposed to the VC world. Do you know anyone? Can you make an intro? Yeah, I'll set you up for a coffee. I went for a coffee. This was a funny experience. And I go in, and they're like a small health VC, a famous VC. I didn't know much about it. I just went and said, I just come to meet you guys. I met the principal, and so the principal, the owner, whose funds it was, and one of his juniors. And so they took a meeting with me, private meeting room. I was just like, it's a bit OTT. It turns out they thought I was there for an interview with them, right? But I just wanted to know about the industry. And so the guy's grilling me like crazy. He's like, so what are you gonna do? What's this? And I'm just like, right, you're getting a bit hard on me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to like show you who I am, right? And just like that belief I had in myself was like, no, listen, I'm here. I want this, and I'll tell you all about myself. But at this point, I really understood the power of your own story. And being able to connect your dots in your own story and articulate that is very important. Because that's what gets you buy-in from other people. People buy into stories. They want to know. If you tell them, look, if I'm telling you my story and I'm connecting in conversation to this VC that this is where I'm coming, this is where I'm from, this is what I've done, and this is where I want to go, that's so much more compelling than, you know, this is what I want to do. You know, the knowing the why you are here in the first place and what you want to do with it is, and being clear on that when any introduction, any meeting that you're having, and you have that, you build a connection with that person. And that connection, they buy into your story or they don't buy in. If they're buying, they'll support your journey. And it turned out that they offered me a job in this. And I was like, I don't, he was like, okay, so when can you start? I'm like, I'm not here for an interview. But he was like, okay, so how many days could you do? And I was like, well, you know, I could do my GP training part-time. I just laughing back at this now, like this is a really successful VC. And I'm like speaking, I'm like, maybe I could do part-time. I could probably do 1 day a week. And it was just, I was like, and it was just like, look, think about it and come back to me. And he was smiling and laughing at the end. But it's just really fascinating, you know, that reflective process having afterwards is that, you know, the world is really your oyster, you know, but you got to go at it, not from a place of, I should have this, or I could have that, or I don't have these ingredients and therefore I can't get this success. It's, who am I? What is my story? What is my why? And what do I want to do? And if it's with a good intention, then you remove the ego and you just go speak to people, because it's not about you anymore. It's about what your intention is and what you want to do. Does that make sense? So whenever I think in that way, whenever I feel like I'm going into a scenario where there's a power dynamic or an imbalance or whatever, I always attach to my mission. This is more important than me. You know, this is more important than me. And then when I'm in that zone, you know, there's nothing. The head of state, David Cameron, I've spoken to. You know, I've gone up to him and like, you know, nailed him down and spoken to him about a topic, or whoever it is, you know, royal families, this, that. I know that this is bigger than me. It's not about what you perceive of me in that moment. It's about you understanding what I would like and you learning my story quickly, very articulately, and where I want to go with that energy and intention. And then either you're going to support it or you're not. And I'll quickly learn from that and understand where you are. Maybe you're not in the right space or time or whatever. Things are going on. You've got other priorities. Fair, no problem. You now know who I am, right? And that is how I suppose like I'm getting out some of the formula of where I've got to and why I've got to where I've got to so far.
Yeah, so that's an interesting segue actually, because so you're working, completely wholly, as a doctor, and then an opportunity arises, which you didn't know was an opportunity. It was just almost like just to meet somebody, like you said, just to meet someone, just to learn something, have a conversation, which turned into a job opportunity, working in the financial side of things of the medical practice. And it's interesting, you said that there's a few like modules that you took which were like entrepreneurship and how to build a practice and stuff like that as well. So it's almost sounding like things are now kind of tying up together. So is this where you learn more about, I guess, raising funds, and again, the money side, the investment side of the medical practice, and then again, has that helped you to set this up? Did you take outside investments, or was this raised wholly by yourself? Did you bootstrap it? What's the bridge now between that world and where we are today?
Right, so I didn't end up taking that job in
Okay.
LVC, and I ended up finishing, I ended up finishing my GP training, and around that same sort of time, my sister, she's also a doctor. She wanted to. She bought this idea of opening a medical spa over from the US. So she followed education as well, and she became a dual board certified US and UK cosmetic dermatologist, and she came up with this medical spa concept that she wanted to bring to the UK. And so then she created, and then I was employee number one, and we created this this business called LMS Wellness, which was more aesthetics, cosmetic dermatology, hair regeneration, body shaping, and we built that up. Started with Doctor in a Bag, renting a room in Harley Street, then renting a room above different hairdressers, and then growing that. That was probably about 8-9 years ago. We started that 7-8 years ago, something like that. And that we just grew that together. Worked hard and we grew that together. But as I was doing that, that's when my interest is like, okay, I was never really interested in kind of aesthetics, although I did like to see the people look fresher and how you could use innovations and stimulate the skin and get rid of eczema and get rid of other skin conditions and aged skin and reverse the age of it. I was like, wow, I'll make hair grow again. I was like, that's pretty cool. And so kind of brought in a lot of the innovations from medicine, even like stem cells, for example. They come into the aesthetics world first rather than into the health world. So I was able to kind of bring some really cool innovations in. And then I started to look at the internal human body and started to study around the world. I went to Germany, Austria. That's where a lot of internal medicine innovations came from in terms of wellness. So I studied there. I went to conferences there, went to the US, went to a lot of conferences in the US, and just curious, inquisitive, and applying that same methodology. You would go to speak to a couple of the different speakers of the faculty, and then I would say, build relationships with them, and studied something called functional medicine there in 2015. And then I just started, and then one of the faculty there, his name was Mark, And I asked him if he'd mentor me and kind of like create a program here in London. And we started to do that and started to treat some of those aesthetic clients with this type of healthcare and get amazing results. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff works. Okay, I need to keep evolving this and learning and evolving. And it started to build this approach, this methodology of looking at the human body in this way, which combined the longevity science learning from stem cell world to this functional medicine, real-time physiology, looking at how things are connected, your hormones, your nutrients, your inflammation, your metabolism, your blood sugar, how it's all connected and how you can fine-tune them by looking in more detail with advanced testing that we sent to the US and correcting them using supplements and key nutrients, and you start to correct them and people feel better and the markers improve. And I was like, okay, great. Then I started to look at different therapies out there that would stimulate regeneration, the oxygen chamber that we have. I was the first doctor in the UK to get that custom made 6 years ago, a multi-person chamber that you've seen downstairs. And all that does is it transfuses oxygen into your cells, so you carry more oxygen, so the cells work better, safe, no side effects. And I was like, okay, brilliant. We're going to bring that into the model. Cryotherapy, IVs, looking at the different types of nutrients, what are the right ones for different types of people, bringing all of that in. So then you can see this model of healthcare, which looks at the human body slightly in a different way, has now evolved into actual system of care. Yeah, so where anyone can join into that system of care, whether you're sick or whether you're super healthy, the goal is just feeling better. And then because I'd created that brand under LMS, and that was more positioning of it, that brand was different. It was more targeting women, high end. We actually, this is the center, but it was smaller downstairs in the corner before. And we used to serve this community. We also used to do like clinics abroad and in the Middle East particularly. And then it was then COVID came, and around that time, before that, we were looking at expanding it abroad. But then COVID came, and my sister's passion was the aesthetics. My passion was the health. And instead of trying to make that one company do everything, which was difficult because of our marketing and positioning existing, people didn't really take us too seriously. But also pre-COVID, people didn't really take their own health too seriously in the UK. It was more of a US phenomenon where people invested in their own health. And that's why there's like Joe Rogan and all of these like big Tony Robbins, all of these guys talk about health a lot. And then I came up with Human. To answer your question, through that process, we funded it, we self-funded it, and then we took on. We didn't know how to take. I never knew how to take on external funding, like take on investors and stuff. So it wasn't my expertise or area. But what we did know was how to deliver a good service and get the results and really care for our clients. And that's what kept them coming back and telling their friends and spreading. And what we did, my sister's strength was on the branding and the aesthetics and how to create a brand. I guess I was a bit more operationally focused and procedures and systems and etc. And we worked really well together. And then we always took bank loans. We built up enough credit to have a good relationship with the bank, and then they funded some expansion and machine leases and things like that. So we kept ourselves under pressure, I suppose, and through that pressure we responded by our hard work. It was hard work, and it has been hard work, and I think that comes from just like what I said to you right at the beginning was like I grew up in that environment. My dad still works 6-7 days a week, because he loves it, he wants to, and that's just us. That's in our kind of I suppose in our DNA now, and then I launched Human, and I came up with a brand, and I was like, this is perfect. And that had challenges, that had some challenges launching that brand. And as all businesses do, there's challenges that come along the way. It's never just linear uphill. It's kind of like this, and sometimes you're going down and sometimes you're going up. And as you go through business, you learn, you're continually learning, and you get better. it's like any kind of profession. The more you do it, you get better at it. And sometimes it's just about staying in the game. You also learn when things don't work and what does work. And one of the big things to take away is like, you project. I remember we created the concept, this internal external concept, under the old brand, and this pre-COVID, and I was like, okay, I'm going to create this amazing. I knew my intention and I knew what we were about and knew what we could do, right, to help people. And I was like, okay, the Times, they're going to want to write about this because this is like game changing, and no one came, and it was just like a big reality check. That okay, this is going to be hard, and had I known how hard it would be, would I do it? I don't know. I think I probably still would do it, but I think I'd definitely think twice about how I would go about it, for sure. But that's the sometimes you've got to stay in the game. If you believe in it so much, you believe that it's got impact and it's positive, and you can see that you are getting the results, but you're not getting it in front of enough people. Sometimes it's just staying in the game. Just work hard and just stay in the game, and eventually it will take off.
Yeah, when you said that the first time, that was just like, like almost like a bullseye moment in my mind where I was like, that's so true. You just need to stay in the game. Like you have your ups, you have your downs, you have your times where you believe in yourself and the world is telling you that that it believes in you. And then you have the opposite. And it's so easy to just fall off on the opposite. And I always feel that like one thing negative can outweigh 10 things that are positive. So, it's really important, like you said, to just have that mindset and focus of just staying in the game.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to tell you what they know, and if they haven't done it, how are they going to tell you anything that's, they're going to give you a perspective. And the reason why they haven't done it is because they don't have that belief and that risk appetite and that the conviction that you have in your concept and what positive and what benefit it brings, what value does it add, what problem does it solve, And if you really believe that it solves a problem uniquely, and you've got to work at it and learn from every time you're getting it out to market in different ways, and take the feedback from it. Yeah, you got to stay in the game sometimes, man. That's some mantra that I tell myself. Sometimes you got to stay in the game. Sometimes it's been like skin of the teeth times. It's been real skin of the teeth times. And where you wouldn't imagine how difficult financially it is. You're committed in a lease. It's COVID. You're in the most expensive area in London, and your landlord wants to rent, whether it's now or they're happy to delay it for 6 months. They still want their rent, and that rent is accumulating. If it's not rent, it's staff. Your staff is a burden as well, and their responsibility. They're also investment, and so all of these things in business, as you're growing a business out, there's all these like challenges that you just have this beautiful idea. You want to help people and get those, but then the realities come and the challenges with those realities. Sometimes you grow too quick. I've had that when I've grown too quick, and it's just been like we didn't build enough resilience in the business, not enough systems and processes and training time for everyone to catch up and keep up. But I'm I feel very, very blessed, alhamdulillah, that our community is our clients and our patients, our members, they're very, I think they're very appreciative of what we're trying to do, and they've been forgiving when the service hasn't been 100%, at times. But we're getting there. We're always improving, and I think they see that and they appreciate it, and they support us for that.
And genuinely, there's so much to even unpack just in what you've said. We could go so much deeper in some of those topics, but I think this has been a really, really nice way for myself to really understand you and your journey and kind of where your mindset is. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway is, you need to kind of just check your intentions and make sure that you align with your intentions always. And then you've got to stay in the game, right? Those are my kind of two big takeaways from this conversation so far. So, before we end, I just want to ask a question, which is, what do you think what's the biggest strength and opportunity, almost like a SWOT analysis, right? What's the biggest strength and opportunity that you have here? And then also on the converse, what's the biggest weakness and the biggest threat to this business?
To the business, yeah, to the
To
business,
the
yeah.
business, yeah.
So the biggest strength is the intention. The biggest opportunity comes from the intention to help and impact positively humanity. The biggest weakness, if it's not done properly, will be the intention as well. Is like moving away from that intention. I mean, I think this is just like, but I mean, I think the biggest strength, thinking a bit more broadly, the biggest strength of the business is that we are, we are well intended, and that is a strength. We recruit based on their intention of the team members. We're aligned on that mission. We understand the journey is long, and we might not get to the destination, but we know that we're creating ripples amongst other practitioners. We're showing what can be achieved to other doctors, that you don't have to follow the same type of medicine that you're taught. Follow your curiosity, learn about something, and try it. The proof is in the pudding. You've got to try it. Experiencing is believing. Whether it's innovating in ophthalmology or innovating in a surgical, whatever your specialty is, or whether you're a nutritionist or a health practitioner or a nurse, go and expand your horizons. Go to conferences internationally. If you hear something, you're curious about it, develop that, try it, or experience it and then try it. So so there's that side. The biggest weakness is always a tough one, isn't it? There are many areas that we want to strengthen and improve on, and I think one of the things is you've got to be conscious of when you're in an emerging space, which is what we're in. We're creating one of the drivers of this emerging space, particularly in the UK, is taking on too much. That's definitely something that I've done before, not just for yourself, for your business. And I think there is a lot of merit in doing things sequentially, but also being able to keep things progressing. So you start one project, but you start another project alongside that time. Keep things progressing that need to be moved in tandem. But in an emerging market, there's a lot of opportunities that present themselves, and cutting through the noise, and sometimes you just got to do you for until you can entertain those opportunities. Just do you and focus on solidifying what you're doing, because you focus on that, you're only going to accelerate yourself even more, and more opportunities are going to present themselves. So it's a balance. It's hard striking that balance, because when you're new in business, any opportunity you take, right? Because you're new, it's a new concept. You will take anything, anyone that's showing interest, you're going to be happy with. You're going to do stuff with. So that's something that we're aware of. Opportunities, yeah. I mean, I really believe that there's so many people that currently still have a blind spot about how to engage with their human body so they can get the most out of it. So all of those people to us are an opportunity to educate and empower. The threats, I think one of the biggest threats is going to be managing the ego, is for everyone, not just because I believe the business also has a soul, and the business also has an ego, right? And so it's going to be something that we all have. It's not just me, but my whole leadership team, my whole team, will have to be navigating and conscious of that as well. How do we keep that soul clean? How do we keep that energy in the right direction, and how do we not get caught up in things? And in all of that, I've not talked about any external organizations. I've not talked about any competitors or anyone in particular, because I don't believe that it's in anyone else's hand. It's in our hands. Truly is in our hands. Yes, the political system might have an influence, the regulatory, the insurance, the other competitors, they might have an influence, but it's in our hands. That is always going to be. Stakeholders are always going to be part of the journey, but it's all in your hands, I believe, and yeah.
No, bro, look, thanks so much for your time today. I think you know, for anyone who like it's just for anyone. I mean, I think the what we've spoken about here really is just certain blueprints for success. And I think, you know, we mentioned two, and I think the last one is, you know, it's almost the sense that I get is there's almost like a fear, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's almost like a sense of fear of repeating the same mistake that your father might have made at the time, which was not to innovate in the business, to kind of, okay, we've got something good here, let's just keep doing this. But like you mentioned, there was not that foresight of what could happen. And what you're doing here is almost challenging that, which is, you know, almost you never want to be in a position where, you know, you're going to fall behind. You know, like you said, you guys are in the future. This is to you know, this is to evolve people to the next level. Um, and again, you mentioned not about talking about competitors. That's really interesting because that goes with your philosophy, which you said at the start, which is being better than you were before. So, look, bro, thanks so much for your time, man. I think there's a lot of topics that I want to discuss. We need to discuss. So, I hope in a few months' time we can do this again. But for now, that was you know, very, very insightful and something that I think you know, a lot of people are going to benefit from. So, no, thank you so much for your time, bro.
Absolute pleasure, man. And thank you for teaching me some things as well, man. You taught me and you connected something that I've never connected before. So I think there could be some truth in what you were saying about that. You know, I never actually thought of that. I never connected to that. So yeah, I mean, you're great. You're a great host. You're a great listener and communicator and distiller of information. And that's by you being present. You know, and anyone listening to this, sometimes you might need to listen to things twice. You know, when I was listening to podcasts, I would be, you know, on the tube sometimes on the way in to work, and I would listen to a whole podcast, and I would be making notes. Sometimes I listen to it back again. So if there's some parts of this that you think might have resonated, or you were busy at that time, you were listening to again, I agree with you. There is some definite ingredients that I've reflected on, that I've shared today, that hopefully that could benefit you if you reflect on it yourself, you know. Yeah, I'd love to be back on for part two.
No,
Let's
thanks
see
so
what
much,
people
bro.
think.
No, Jack, okay, thanks for your kind words. I really appreciate it, bro. And for anybody who is watching this or listening to this, I'll put all the links in the description for how you can get in touch with Dr. E. And I just think if you like want to have a better life, then investing in your health is the best way to do that. So make sure that you do come down, check out Dr. E, see his facility. I think just seeing the facility is going to be enough for you to motivate you into wanting to improve your lifestyle. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave a comment below on something that you found interesting, and we'll see you on the next one.